Coming up next, we're very, very delighted to introduce one of our key organisers for this event, who's also presenting this year. Ryan Jones is the founder of marketing and technology agency Refuel Creative, also one of our key sponsors, with over 20 years' experience in technology, web design, and marketing. Ryan's a skilled marketer, technology consultant, and Google Ads specialist. Ryan's also a certified professional marketer with the AMI and has been a speaker at conferences across Australia and Southeast Asia on marketing, websites, and Google Ads. Ryan founded Refuel Creative just over 3 years ago now and has grown into a platinum HubSpot partner. They're also the 2019 HubSpot Rookie of the Year for the Asia Pacific region, which is just a fantastic achievement for this agency based in Port Adelaide. They're also a 2019 Telstra Business Awards state finalist. So without further ado, I would like to present to you Mr. Ryan Jones, who's going to refill your website with data.
Thank you, Robina. Hello, everybody. And so if you didn't get the whole Ryan does technology and marketing thing, that basically makes me a massive nerd. And part of being a massive nerd means that I like data. And we've talked at a great presentation from Alyssa this morning about customer journey and personas and content. What I'm really passionate about is taking all of this data that we have and using it to make informed, customer-centric decisions. I'm going to gloss over a couple of things now, mainly because Paul took all of my time. Thanks, Paul. But also because Robina has got an excellent presentation on this afternoon about customer journeys. Throw your questions in the webinar chat or the Discord and we'll go through those. But what I want to have a look at is a bit of partly our experience with website redesigns and some of the ways that you can intelligently refuel your website with data. Obviously, a pun was required according to everyone here. So, let me just ask you how your last website redesign went. So, look, and I have been watching Schitt's Creek, so there we go. Let me guess. It went kind of a little bit something like this. You know, it was a good idea. It seemed great in theory, but, you know, things happened and you ended up with a thing that wasn't quite what you were after. Now, look, and I'm gonna talk pretty general in this, so don't take offense because this isn't across the board rule. But why is that? Like, why do we have such a bad experience when we're trying to do website redesigns? And you probably did this when you redesigned your last website. Your website got to about 2 to 3 years old. Somebody went, we should probably redo the website. You requested budget from management for a new one. And they went, you want how much? No. So they approved half that budget, expecting the same outcomes, but also enforcing a really short timeline because, I don't know, maybe the CEO was going to a conference or, I don't know, a thing was happening. So, but management, along with that, they want a really expensive thing. They want a video on the homepage about a thing that they want. They want that expensive thing to be included in their budget and they want it delivered in the reduced timeline. So you compromise your website plan, your internal team or your agency have to compromise what they're doing and try and work within this smaller budget. The website comes back, management decide they want the logo bigger and that's their primary feedback, and you basically get a prettier version of your current website. I'm not sure if that sounds familiar to everyone. I'll probably find a ton of GIFs on the Discord when I get out of this. But why? I'm starting to sound like a repetitive toddler and I don't even have one. Why is that? So some people still think of websites as brochures. Okay, welcome to Microsoft circa 1994. Some of you will remember the gloriousness that was the Microsoft website. So good. But people think of a website as just a brochure. It's just a thing. Like, they just need a professional presence online. No one's going to go there. No one's going to do anything. It doesn't really matter. It's just a thing for when somebody looks up their domain. Some people still think of websites as expenses. I'm spending $5, $10, $20, $50, $100,000 on a website. That's an expensive thing. It's setting fire to money. Some people think that a new website is just going to solve all of their problems. They don't even know what their problems are because they haven't gone through and articulated it and looked at the data and tried to get an idea of what their problems actually are. But this new website's going to solve all of them. They can't articulate what they are, they don't know what they are, but this is going to fix it. People forget sometimes that the website of 2020 is not the Microsoft website of 1994. They're really complicated things that are powered in the background by a sponge with multiple arms. Your website is now expected to generate leads for you. It's expected to be your shopfront, whether you're selling online or whether you're not selling online. You're still expected to have that shopfront. It's expected to run your online sales, and all of this has become more critical in the last 3 to 6 months, as we all know. But the demands on the website to keep up with that are higher than ever. It's expected to be our publishing platform, and it's got to be dynamic and interactive. But it's got to do all that while being a revenue generator for you. So it's not as simple as we want to redo the website and we want to put a bigger logo on it. But why? Why are we still having these conversations about our websites, their performance, the way that they work, etc.? And I'm trying not to offend anyone here, but people often plan websites for their boss, not for their customer. And that is definitely one of the things that we come across. Boss says, I want this. Great. That's not going to get you the outcome that you want. But the boss says we need to have this. But the boss wants an outcome. But the boss, okay. I see where we're going at this. All right. So what are we going to do here? How do we fix this scenario? Well, obviously, I have a background in data and working across paid search, organic search, social gives me a fair idea of consolidating all of those tactics into one data set. And we fix it with a bit of data. Now, we don't want to use the data to avoid the humans, okay? We're going to talk about that in a minute, but we need to use the data to allow us to make informed decisions. And I know that we have nonprofits on the broadcast today. I know that we have council, we have people with small budgets. Data used to be a really expensive thing to do, but it's not anymore. We used to have to do focus groups and research studies and things like that. And all of that is still valid, and all of that is still things that we do when it's possible with the client. But one of the more important things is to be able to use the data that they have to inform what we do with the website. And you actually have a surprising amount of data. So let's look at the data that we have and what we can do with it. So to start with, here's 4 of your key data sources. One that I probably should have included and I didn't is your social data, which definitely comes into play here. But we'll work through this list and we'll come back to it. So your key data sources here are your customers or your personas, as Alyssa was talking about this morning. So your semi-fictional representation of your actual customer, your Google Analytics data, which with your social data can actually inform who your personas are, your search data, because everybody needs to be found online these days and people find you by using a search engine. And finally, your heat maps. And for those of you who aren't super familiar with heat maps, I'll look through those in a sec. So let's have a look at your customers and your personas. And this is the first one that I've put here specifically because humans come first. And I'm not talking about your boss. I'm talking about your customer. Your customer has to come first because if your customer is central to what you're doing and your customer comes first in your website build, your boss will get the outcomes that they're looking for. They'll get the online sales, they'll get their lead conversions, they'll get the visits. So we need to think about how these customers find your website. What is the content that they're actually interested in? What do they want to do on your site? What are their pain points? Is the main thing that the customer wants to do on your website to place an online inquiry, but that takes, as Jen was talking about yesterday, 7 or 8 clicks to get to place an online inquiry? They're just not going to do that. So we need to look at what their needs are, what their pain points are, and we can use our other data sources to look at that. So you can use your analytics data to find some of that, but there's this old-fashioned thing that the cool digital kids on the Discord won't know about that's called a phone. And you pick it up and you dial a couple of numbers and somebody answers it. And more often than not, what you'll find is your good customers are quite happy to spend 10 minutes talking about you, 15 minutes talking to you about what their problems are, about their pain points, and about how your website could be improved to help them. And that's not a very big expense for your business. So your next step is your Google Analytics. Now, I haven't gone through and done hey, you need to have Google Analytics, this is what it is and this is what it does, because I feel like we're well and truly past that at this point. If you don't have Google Analytics, and I'll go through some action points in a minute, just go and do that now. Google Analytics in this context, what I'm looking for is issues with navigation that users might be having, but also issues with information prioritization. So which pages are getting the most traffic? So you can go into your site content, your all pages report, you can see which pages were getting the most traffic. Are they the ones that are the most important? I was on a client call after social media day yesterday. We spent an hour and a half going through some key pages on their site, and the page that was the primary page on their site was actually one of the lower of the entrance pages to their website. So they had this parent page of all these different product offerings that they had. I'm not going to name and shame, but they had this page, all these different product offerings, that was their key page that went out to all the other ones, and it was 0.74% of all of the entrances to their website. One of the child pages of that page was 4.5% of all the traffic to their website. So in their case, they're looking at this page and they're going, well, if that's the most important page, we need to do something about that so that people visit that page and see the full range. What are your key traffic sources? I love this one because somebody comes to you and they go, hey, we do a lot of Twitter. We don't do any Twitter advertising, but they always go, we do a lot of Twitter. We spend 10 hours a month, whatever it is, putting links on Twitter, posting on Twitter. There's very little engagement, and we go into their Google Analytics data and we go, actually, you're investing all this time in Twitter, it's bringing no traffic to you, it's bringing no followers, and you're getting no engagement. So if we want to drive traffic to the site, we need to look at what channels that we've got, and potentially we can move some of that resourcing around to actually get a better outcome for you. Then we also need to look at the pages that bring in your traffic, which I talked about before, but that is under your site content and your landing pages. Again, you want to make sure that that aligns with what's most important to you. And then finally, we quite often find when we go into a new Google Analytics account that the client has got no goals set up. They've got no idea on which channels are actually driving conversions on their site. And even the simplest website has some form of goal that they want achieved on the website, whether that is filling out a form, clicking on a phone number, downloading a PDF, whatever it might be. So you need to question, are you tracking those things? Do you have it set up at all? And if you do, who's doing that and what are they doing with that data? We look at our search data and, what are people looking for that you can help with? Now, there's two ways to look at this, I guess. One is, 20 years ago, your primary source of leads was, 20 years ago, is that far enough back? Was probably the Yellow Pages. And if somebody wanted a business, they would go to the Yellow Pages, they would flick through it until they find it, and you'd have all these businesses whose business name is AAA, Rob's Plumbing, just so they could get the top result, game the system. But the world doesn't work that way anymore. People pull out their smartphone, they go through, they find the thing that they're looking for. Now, so the first step here, we know that people are doing this. We know that this is a thing, and we know that the people who need our help, our product, our solution, they are going to be looking for us this way. So the first step here is, what do we currently rank for? What keywords are we ranking for? What are your competitors ranking for? Do we know that? Are they the same things? Are there opportunities there in keywords that we're not currently targeting? But what are your customers actually looking for? It's really important to find the keywords that your customers are using and find language and content that meets the customer needs. You might call a product something that is a very technical piece of jargon, but in reality, the customer doesn't know what that thing is. They know what the simplified colloquialism is, and they'll go over to that term. So this is about meeting the needs of your customers, making sure that you've got content that they can relate to so that they will find the site, and when they're on the site, they will find the information that they need, which will get you the conversion that you're after. Next up, heat maps and screen recordings. And if you're not already using these, you really need to start using them. So these will allow you to see the way your customers navigate. So we can look at things like how far down the page users are scrolling. We can look at where the user is having issues. We can pull up screen recordings which are able to block things like credit cards and personal information. They just hide that data for us. And we can really find out what they're doing and how they're doing it. Now, I'll talk a little bit more about these later. But the two resources I'd recommend here, the first one is Hotjar, which I see Robina nodding. I know C-Link use Hotjar. Hotjar have a great free offering, good idea to get started. We use a solution here called Lucky Orange. It's very cheap, but it's not free. And it just gives us an extra level of data that we can then feed into our CRM. Okay, so we've got this massive data coming in from these different data sources. So, and most of you are probably thinking, well, I already know that I've got this data. That's fine. I can make use of that data. But how does that become part of a website plan? So we use a tactic here which is called growth-driven design. And if you haven't heard about growth-driven design before, you'll hear what it's about and you'll go, oh, actually, that makes a lot of sense. The thing with growth-driven design is those who support growth-driven design believe that it's a smarter system for web design. Because the idea is to launch a new site quickly, but simplify the outcome of that initial website build, but then make continuous improvements to the website over time based on real visitor data, real feedback that you're getting from all of your different data measurement tools. That means that instead of this model where you build a website and then you build another one in a couple of years, and then you build another one in a couple of years, you're constantly making adjustments and improvements. So you're constantly seeing improvements to your search rankings, your conversions, and it's more focused on not just the end user and the customer, but the results that you're getting out of the project. If you build a website today and you make no improvements for 2 years, you're just going to get left behind in the world. You need to be able to make small adjustments as you go. So what are the pain points that we're trying to solve with something like growth-driven design? Well, traditionally, we have this model where you pay a large sum up front, a lot of resources and time go into the website build in what is generally a relatively short period of time, sort of 2 to 6 months, depending on the project. The results that you get out of that, they're based on the assumptions that you had at the start of the project. Hopefully you've used data to come up with some of those assumptions, but more often than not, it's back to that initial thing I said about management wanting their logo bigger. And then the website stays static for 2 years, at which point the website gets redone because your competitor got a new website. If we look at growth-driven design, the cost is then spread over time. So you might spend the same amount as you spent on the new website, but you spend that in monthly costs over the course of 2 years, making those slight adjustments. And those costs might be the agency that's supporting you, or they might be the internal resources, might be your internal developers if you're lucky enough to have internal developers. But no matter whether it's internal or external resource, there's still a cost associated with that. You want to launch the website quickly and you want to improve the website from there. Get the feedback, get the heat maps, get the customer recordings, and work out what our next steps are. We make database decisions on a regular basis, so we have continuous improvement. And the idea is, instead of your website traffic graph and your conversion graph going step, we are looking for that 45-degree angle. So, what can you, as a digital marketer, do about this today and for free? Give you some good takeaways so that you can take some of this data-driven approach and put it into your day-to-day work. And I can tell you that most of the things that I've got here, you could do over the lunch break if you were really keen. 12:30, that's about lunch, isn't it, Robina? Yeah. So you can get through it in your lunch break if you're desperate. Otherwise, you can knock it off this afternoon over a bottle of wine, Bell. So, number 1, Google Tag Manager. If you don't already have Google Tag Manager, I put this number 1. Excuse me. So, I put this number 1 so that you can start on the next steps. Because you will need a developer to help you implement Google Tag Manager in a lot of cases. But once you've had the developer implement Tag Manager, you can then modify and add your tags yourself. It's putting the power of the analytics in the marketer's hands, so you don't have to log a job with your developer every time you want to make a change to your analytics. It's free. You can go to Tag Manager and you can sign up. Step 2, Google Analytics. And this is relevant no matter whether you're already on Google Analytics or you're not, because it changes a lot. And if you don't look at your configuration on a regular basis, now's your chance. So go into Google Analytics, check your configuration. Do you have your goals set up? Have you got your demographics and interest reports correctly configured? Do you have your cross-device analytics set up so we can start to measure people coming from mobile and desktop? Have you excluded your internal IP addresses, which I tell you is an absolute pain in the neck with everybody working from home with dynamic IP addresses? On the plus side, our website traffic went up quite considerably, but you should be excluding your office IP addresses. Finally, are you excluding bots? Because you don't need that interfering with your data. Make sure you have it correctly linked. So Google Search Console for your webmaster data, but also make sure you've got it linked to Google Ads if you're doing Google Ads, so you can see exactly what's driving your traffic. Set up your e-commerce tools if you're actually using e-commerce. Some of the e-commerce related tools that we use now are very sophisticated and we can bring offline data back into the website using events and things like that. Definitely have a look at that. Finally, review the data you have. We don't look at our data often enough in a lot of cases, so I really recommend you just spend 5 or 10 minutes looking at your data. Maybe all you will get out of that 5 or 10 minutes is a shiny sense of satisfaction because you can see that you've done a good job, you can see that you've improved the data over the last 12 months, and it's a good thing to see what a good job you've done on a Friday afternoon. If you don't have Google Analytics, like I said before, just go and sign up. Go and sign up now, go through my checklist and get that started. So number 3 would be heat mapping. Now I mentioned this before, no matter what tool you use, go and set up your heat maps on your key pages. Go and set up your recordings so that you've got your recordings of your customer interactions on your website. And finally, set up funnels. If you're using something like Hotjar, and you're in an e-commerce business, you can set up a funnel to follow through and see where people are dropping off on your flow so that you can help them avoid dropping off. Okay, apparently all GIFs, which is great. Hotjar is free, but they're limited in the number of heat maps and recordings you can have. Their paid plan starts at about US $30. Lucky Orange, the one we use, that's $10 a month. Not free, but the recordings are a bit more sophisticated, the heat maps are a bit better, and we get some daily updates on progress and things like that. Number 4, your search traffic. Now, in this case, we would use something like SEMrush or Ahrefs. Now, I said something that you can do today and for free. Neither of those are free, but they offer free trials and they can give you some initial data. So a way to get started very quickly. You can see how the search engines see your website and also how people are finding your website. You will find all kinds of terms that are linking to your website that you never expected. If this is the first time that you're looking at that data, very simple to go through and look at what's going on and get some benchmarks and some comparison data. And I mentioned in the Discord before, but if you shoot us an email or DM me on Discord, we'll pull that SEMrush domain report for you so that you don't have to pay for it, and just give you that idea of what's going on your website. Number 5, build out your personas. So follow Alyssa's tips this morning on personas. Use all the data you've got to inform who your personas are. Wait for Robina's tips on customers and journeys at 1:45 after the break, and build out some personas that you can then report on. Make sure you're actually meeting their needs. If you use HubSpot, obviously we're a HubSpot agency. I know that some people do use it. You can actually set your personas up in HubSpot so that you can start to customize the information that you're providing those people, and also track how many of those personas you've got so you get an idea of who your biggest persona is. It's a great way of being able to take personas from being a theoretical representation to being a much more real representation of what you're doing. Number 6. Do we call this a bonus tip? Can we call this a bonus tip? Okay, let's call it a bonus tip. Keep tabs on your data. So measurement is one thing, but monitoring and acting on it is a very different thing. For that, we use a tool called DataBox, which is free, obviously paid offerings, but starts at free for a certain number of data sources. It supports most of the common data sources that you would use, whether it's Google Analytics, Google Ads, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, etc. But it allows you to create mashups and custom data. Why haven't I said Google Data Studio? In our experience, it's easier and more reliable to get the data that we need into DataBox than it is Google Data Studio. DataBox is also more real-time and more alert-driven than what we get out of Google Data Studio. And these look a bit like this. Nike are not a client of ours. I stole this from Databox's website. That's okay. But you can see here that it's measuring our results over the last 30 days, and they've got a smattering of their Google Analytics data on the one board so they can see their KPIs. If you're a Slack addict like we are here, you can set up alerts so that if something veers from KPI or a KPI is achieved, you get an alert in Slack. Very cool tool to make sure that you've got your finger on the pulse of your data. All right, that is all you need to know to get started with data in your website redesign. If you do have any more questions, you can jump on the Discord. Robina's monitoring it closely to see if there's any last questions. Otherwise, just give us a call, hit me up on Discord, or jump on the website. No, mayonnaise is not an instrument. Thank you very much. So, Robina, if there's no more questions, you want me to throw to lunch? All right, so we're going to have a lunch break, and at 1:45, we're going to come back with Robina talking about customer journeys. Have a good lunch, everybody.